been one of the debates that's divided the nation. Everyone has a view on this, the legalisation of cannabis, and has done for a number of years. And earlier in the program, we heard National's Deputy Leader Paula Bennett's side of things, and now the Helen Foundation recommends in a new report that New Zealand should expunge minor cannabis convictions and create a legal and responsible market for the drug. Make this a health issue once and for all, which it is, isn't it? Joining us now is former Prime Minister Helen Clark. Good morning.
Good morning, Duncan.
Nice to have you. And you knew you were walking into controversy with this report, didn't you?
Oh, sure.
Well, why didn't you do it when you were PM?
Well, I've actually gone back and researched confidence supply agreements, and we had a confidence supply agreement with United Future. Into those two agreements in 2002 and 2005 was specifically written that the government will do nothing about the legalisation of cannabis. What we did do in the last term was ask the Law Commission to do a report on the Misuse of Drugs Act, and they reported after I'd left office and recommended a health-based decriminalisation approach. And what I said to Stuff yesterday was we would have then picked up that report and done something with it.
And pushed it in would you have gone to the people, or do you just made a rule in the Parliament?
You see, it's all coalition politics, isn't it? I mean, the current government is going to the people because there isn't a majority within the government for going for legalisation, whereas in Canada they had a majority for legalisation and regulation, so they did it.
But if you have Winston, if you have Peter Dunn, all those sorts of people, they're Conservatives socially, so you would have had to have gone to the people, wouldn't you?
Well, it would have depended what the outcome of the election was, what the configuration was. Peter Dunn, of course, has moved in a tremendous way since then and has become very, very supportive of these kinds of approaches, and was as a minister towards the end of his time in government.
Okay, so how does it look then? Are you saying that we're criminalising too many people right now?
Well, what I'm saying is we're wasting police and justice time chasing anybody for the use of a drug which on any objective evidence is causing less harm to people and society than either tobacco or alcohol.
Yep.
So let's cut to it. Young people have their lives blighted by convictions. It's very arbitrary. There is a lot of police discretion around it. The proportion of young Māori who are caught up in this is significantly high. I think we ought to focus on getting the law and the rules around it right, and then we can focus on the health messaging. I don't promote the use of it. I don't promote the use of tobacco or any of these other things. But I say get real and put rules around it. I thought you were the face of smoke-free back in the day. I mean, you pushed smoke-free work. Oh, absolutely, but never a ban on tobacco. And what you find, if you look at the history of how drugs are classified, there's no reason for classifying cannabis as a dangerous drug and not tobacco and alcohol.
Or alcohol, I mean, what's worse?
Immensely worse, alcohol, in terms of damage to people and to society. So we have to get real. This is a drug that up to 80% of Kiwis will use sometime in their lives. They know your teeth don't go green, your hair doesn't fall out. You know, most people move on from it. It's not a major issue.
So you say police are spending too much time on this and wasting time, effectively, and resource. How many convictions were there last year for cannabis, for holding cannabis?
Well, you see, here's the issue. The police have, to a large extent, given up on it.
They have.
So why don't we realise this and say, let's move to legislate and regulate? That's where the Canadians got to. I went to visit the Canadian MP who was in charge of the legislation in Ottawa last year. He had been the police chief in Toronto for years. He said to me, Helen, I know what doesn't work. We can't ban it. We can't stop it. We've got to get rules around it.
We've decriminalised anyway. This government has effectively done it through the law, through this recommendation, through this memo to police that says do not send them to jail, or the court send them to the hospital.
Actually, more than that, because it's a formal law, and the law in effect directs the police to divert people, but it is still discretion. And
so
the other
why
thing,
even change it though? But do we need to change it given that this is now the directive?
So there's two things. One, discretion will still leave the space for police to use the law, and what we've seen.
Is that a good or bad thing?
Well, ideally, you would go beyond discretion, because discretion has led to a particular portion of our society, which is Māoridom, being disproportionately impacted.
It's too loose.
Yeah. And secondly, there's the issue of supply. So if you decriminalise, but then you are still leaving the supply in the hand of criminals, you haven't moved far enough.
Who said, and what evidence is there that the criminals will exit the market anyway? Because if there's going to be this nice weed that's not too strong and it's all okay for you in the shops, then there's still a market for the gangs to make the heavy ganja, isn't there?
Well, not necessarily. I mean, a lot of countries have gone down this track. In Switzerland, people can buy cannabis locally. It's low on the THC and high on the CBD, to use those terms. So, no, you get a control on the market. If you put rules around, you say you can't buy it if you're under 20. Here's what the regulated content is.
Just go to the gangs, Helen.
No, they won't, because most people, given a choice between doing something legally and illegally, will take the legal route. But at the moment, we push everybody down the illegal route.
But how many convictions were there last year? That's the thing, because you say there's been all these convictions. We're wasting all this time on it. Do we actually know?
Well, yes, we do. And what we know is the police have, to a large extent, given up on it.
They have given up, yeah.
But then you face the contradiction of the law that it can be pulled out and thrown to you at any time.
We're talking historically. There used to be lots of convictions.
Oh, yes.
They used to throw people in. But this was a long time ago. The police have.
But do you want that ongoing hypocrisy in the law that you have something on the statute
and
book?
expunging.
Yep.
So you could be expunging hundreds of people here. You will be.
Well, you would be. You would be. But then, if you recognise that actually it wasn't that sensible to try and ban something that up to 80% of Kiwis will use.
What's a minor infringement? What is a minor?
Well, what we say is if you've got a conviction and there was never any armed or other violence towards police involved, just expunge it. We have a record of doing this on other issues.
And apologise?
Oh, I mean, I was known for issuing the odd apology where there was an injustice, but I think people would just be satisfied with expungement.
You talked just a little bit before about the rules. Exactly, can you be clear on the rules? What rules will be in place for this?
So the government's got quite a detailed cabinet paper out about what rules it would put around it. Age of 20. Can't buy under that. You would regulate for the content. So as in Switzerland, you could keep the sort of high content low and the sort of calming content, reasonable. You could say no advertising and promotion, because there is a difference between the full-on commercial model of Colorado and then the Uruguay one where you can buy in government shops, which we don't have, right? So you need to find a Kiwi solution. I would actually start with tobacco regulation, plain packaging, no advertising, no promotion, age limit. Really get a grip on it.
Where do you sell it?
Well, again, that's you go the Colorado way where it's everywhere, or the Uruguay way where it's government stores. Which
police stations.
I mean, no. You find a Kiwi solution to it. The Swiss, as I say, you can go to the local store and buy a pretty.
So under the Helen Clark regime, let's say, I know you've moved on from running the country, but under Helen Clark, where would you buy it? So if let's say I'm a 21-year-old and I want something tonight, where would I go to get it under your model?
Well, I'm not opposed to it being available in a store, right? But like cigarettes, no promotion,
Right, not
no
big
big signs,
not dairies.
Well, I mean that's for the discussion to sort out. I mean, the most important decision actually is where you're going to sell it.
Yeah, but marijuana in your local dairy.
Well, tobacco's in the local dairy. Yeah. You look at every single index of harm to society. Tobacco's out there as a killer.
Yes.
Cannabis is down there, and yet we walk in and we expect to see tobacco behind the counter.
That could be legitimately happen.
That's for discussion about where you sell it. I mean, do you want to restrict it to pharmacies? Would the pharmacies want it? You've got to have that sort of discussion.
You're going to sell it in the dairies, better arm the dairy owners.
And will you buy at Helen Clark?
No.
Very good.
It was a long. You did try it at university, didn't you? Was that the line?
Wasn't that the Paul Holmes question? And I said, Paul, we were at university in the 1960s.
Say no more.
But didn't you say you didn't inhale or something as well?
No, that was Bill Clinton.
Okay. Helen Clark, appreciate one more thing. Should the Prime Minister come out with a position on this? Do you think it's important that she does?
Look, I think that's up to her. The Minister of Justice and the Minister of Health are both out there saying that they support legislating and regulating. And you've got to put the two together. It's the rules that actually make it saleable.
It's a tough one, isn't it, for Prime Ministers of the day to have a position on this, you may have found?
Well, look, Jacinda will make her own choice on how she handles it, but she has senior ministers in key portfolios out there saying this is the way to go.
Appreciate your time on the programme. All the very best. Thanks. We welcome you back. That's former Prime Minister Helen Clark. Not only is she in opposition, but she also opposes legalising cannabis. I'm pretty sure that's her position. Paula Bennett has been raising concerns